You imagine over the years, the Red Hot Chili Peppers touring the world, they got complaints of noise and behavior, and it's like this time they come around and goes, "Oh, Chili Peppers are in town. Oh, not that fucking trumpet again."
Yeah,
You know?
not the four guys out of their mind on heroin wearing socks on
Yeah,
their
yeah,
dicks
yeah,
jumping around all
yeah,
over
yeah. No, no, no. Just some. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, you bastard. My name is John. His name is Andy. You're everywhere and nowhere, baby. That's where you're at. Going down a bumpy hillside in your hippie hat. More on that later. But first, we have a track list to offered up by Andy. Andy, what's in the pot today?
What's in the pot today has only been in the pot for like a week or so. I think last week I reached out to you and was like, John, here are two songs that I don't want you to check out until I bring them to you on the channel, so don't go rogue on me. And we're going to be getting into one of those right now. And it was actually, ironically enough, it was brought up very recently by Gzo on our latest Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds episode, where they brought up this track as well. And I said, well, just hold your horses. But in because of that, I actually kind of moved it up the ladder a little bit. So we're gonna get into this track, another cover. I guess that's two in a row for me. Wichita Lineman, but it's going to be by Flea off of his new album, and it's featuring Nick Cave on vocals. So, really would like to get your opinion on this and thoughts on this. I think way back in the Into the Music days, we had talked about, and I had brought up and highlighted some of Flea's trumpet work, and noted that that was kind of his first instrument, and got you checking out some of that. It was also on The Widow by the Mars Volta. I had you check out, and he features on trumpet on that as well. So here he is, all these, this time later, all these years later, he's finally put out his own album that kind of features or is centered around his love for the trumpet and jazz. So, did you catch any wind of this, or have you heard about this?
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of the track was, but it released like two, maybe three tracks uh, around the New Year time. Definitely two. I listened to them, and so I knew this album was coming.
Yeah,
I have downloaded the album. It is sitting as we speak in the vault,
fair.
um,
I
which
appreciate the
is not
restraint.
an unusual position for many albums to be sitting in unheard. Um,
Yes.
but yes, you said about this, so I haven't listened to it yet, but
Great,
very
great.
excited and intrigued.
Awesome, awesome. Well, please go off, give this collaboration from Flea and Nick Cave a listen, and come back and let us all know what you've made of it.
Yeah, I knew he was going to come in there. So great start. It starts off with a gong. Reminds me of like rank movies. Immediately got a very different feel. This is big jazz. So you have this very cool percussion and a huge plump sounding double bass, upright bass, whatever. Um, Immediately feels quite intimate. Um, yeah, it's got a great feel to it straight away. And then in comes in the left channel that sort of guitar with that guitar motif from the original, which is lovely. And we just had the first sort of breaths of Mr. Cave, so let's just go back a wee bit and just. It sounds great.
I'm a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the wine, and the Wichita Lineman is still on the line.
Hey, I'm going to try not to stop too much, but just to say, it's really interesting hearing Nick Cave's voice. He brings something very different to Glenn Campbell, as you'd expect. The original vocals, there's a wonderful sort of yearning about them and an earnestness almost. Mixed in with that, there's all the other emotions about sort of, missing someone and what's going on with your own life as well. Nick Cave's voice, you can hear in it, there's almost like an exhaustion, and there's pain as well for various reasons, and there's fragility. It's a very different. The original's almost like it is a bit of a plead to that other person. That if they don't connect, then his life won't be quite right. Whereas you get the feeling with Nick Cave that his life's not going to be quite right, whatever happens. It's just a different sort of focus on it. Really lovely. It's a really lovely sound to it, and the gentle guitar. And that's a very sort of intimate, softly held rhythm section. It's just beautiful. Works really well. Just about to go again. So, and also those first 6-7 lines, I just think are fantastic lyrics. So evocative, and it still works well with Nick Cave singing them as it does with Glenn Campbell. So yeah, hats off. This is a fantastic song. This is a really good version so far. Love the cymbal splashes as well, gentle.
I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. And if it snows, the stretch down south won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita Lineman is still on the line.
So atmospheric.
Is still on the line. And I need you.
Yeah, that sounded fantastic. It sounded very sort of old school as well. You could imagine this being redone as part of a score to a film in the late 60s quite easily. Some of the Thomas Crown Affair kind of vibe to it. I've no idea where this started. Let's just go back to here because it's a short song. I need to listen to that bit again. Beautiful. The tone was. I said this before with Andy that multiple brass, trumpets, etc., and trombones and all that. It just exudes joy and exuberance when they're all gathered together. But a solo trumpet really can project sorrow so well. In the last post or reveille or whatever. But yeah. Oh, wow.
And I need you more, won't you? And I want you for all time. And the Wichita Lineman is still on the line. Still on the line. Still on the Still on the line.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Really, really enjoyed that. And it did bring a different angle to what's already, for me, one of those perfect songs. I hold the original in really high regard. I wouldn't say this is better than it, obviously, but it certainly had a different feel to it, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, everything about it, the way it was arranged, that soft, jazzy feel to it, it all, Nick Cage vocals, it's an inspired choice. And I presume it's Flea playing the trumpet, because I know he does. Yeah, again, wonderful. I loved how it came in for sort of kind of a solo, very short, really. And then Cave starts singing again, and he comes back in. And first of all, he's echoing the vocal melody, and then he sort of takes over the guitar melody part. Just really nicely done. So it all had a lovely feel to it. Yeah, this is a track I'll be listening to again and again, definitely. So let's go back and chop this one up with Andy, see what he has to say.
All right, so you are back, John. Please tell us what you made of this track.
So first off, I will say that the song itself is a great song, a truly great song. And I know there's some very famous people who have labeled it as greatest song. I did actually reference the opening lyrics in the intro to Pod by Hum, that episode, the old spoilers. I hold Glenn Campbell and Jimmy Webb's version in the highest regard.
You are wrong.
I have easily heard maybe a couple of dozen cover versions over the years, including a dub version, and also one by These Animal Men, one of the bands I've given you. And in fact, I think that EP, there's a track on there called Heavy Hammond, which is an instrumental which you can't get on YouTube, which is fantastic. So I'm going to figure out some way to get you to that point. It's reminded me of it. But anyway, I've heard lots of good talk about Flea's new album. So really was interested in listening to this. And you add in Mr. Nicholas Cave as well. Then, Interest is peaked.
I should
Peaked.
I should also say Tom York features on this album too. You're probably aware that you've
Yes.
downloaded it. This is no news to you, but for those out there who may have not have heard, not only do you get some Nick Cave in your life, but you also get some Tom York, which is always fun. And those two, Flea and Tom York, are no strangers to collaboration.
So the song starts, and immediately we have a very different take. I get a reminder of an old school film as it opens with a gong, just like that sweaty dude on a rank movie. Um, with subtle late night percussion that ambles arm in arm with the double bass, upright bass, whatever you want to call it. That if it was in human form, it would be described as bootylicious. A guitar plays out the famous melody of the original song in the left channel, quite understatedly, but still really that sort of beauty that it holds anyway. And then Nick Cave enters our story. I have to say, those first 6 or 7 lines, whichever way you want to scan it, are so beautiful and evocative. They're some of my favorite lines of all time. I would say Wichita Lineman is not in my top 10 songs ever, but it's probably in my top 20 songs of all time. It's really high up. So he says, I am a lineman for the county and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire. I hear you through the wine. The Wichita Lineman is still on the line. When I first heard this song, it's probably about 8 years old or so, somewhere around there. I didn't know what a lineman was. I mean, football, soccer,
yeah.
linesman. I didn't know what an overload was either, but it didn't really matter. You could just get from the sound and feel this huge feeling of yearning. Before I even knew what yearning really was, it's just a profound effect on me listening to it. There's some songs that do in the shape you. Yesterday, the first time I heard that, I'm absolutely gobsmacked. It would have been about 6. There's songs like that you stick with you, and this is definitely one of them. So anyway, these first that searching in the sun for another overload is just a beautiful line. The way it's sung by Glenn Campbell is amazing, and it has a sort of earnest purity to it as well. However, Nick Cave's voice has a very different kind of emotional impact. In his voice, there's pain, and exhaustion and fragility. And if you know Nick Cave, there's all the baggage with him as well. And it just really brings a very different side to this. The guitar chimes in the left channel as the plump bass notes and the jazzy percussion kind of envelop the listener with a special kind of intimacy. It's not quite a hug. It's more like all the lights have gone off in your peripheral vision, so you're just in a very small circle. There are lovely touches there along the way, like very gentle cymbal work, splashes as he sings is still on the line. And then that splash continues for about 3 or 4 beats, almost like a ripple going through, still traveling down the line.
Like a current.
Exactly. Then we go into the next verse, and there's almost like a stepping motif for the first 2 lines. And you think, oh, this is really changing. And it hints almost at the forks in the road that this song could take. But after the second line, it goes back into the same sort of progression that it was in this first verse. And at the end of this verse, there's a lovely bass note that sounds like the wood itself and the body is stretching. That really beautiful. Always love those. Then we go into the famous chorus and that declaration. With Glenn Campbell's version, you feel that there's a pleading quality from the narrator, like a need that must be fulfilled. With Cave and this very understated jazzy score, you get the feeling that there's pain coming, whether he gets what he wants or not. It's going to be same. It's a very different sort of, want or need. And then we come to the showstopper, which is Flea's trumpet coming in with this absolutely gorgeous tone. And I said to you before that multiple brass is often a unique form of joy or exuberance, and it comes and it delivers in a way that I absolutely adore. But a single trumpet can voice pathos in a unique manner. Um, and here he doesn't overdo it and become all schmaltzy. It's judged perfectly. And you feel that this song and the choice to do this song has all led to this moment of him just playing that trumpet. That's the whole purpose
Yeah.
behind it, is just to get to that point. Um, back comes Cave with the refrain again, and the trumpet thankfully continues. So we've not just got this 12-second like so. And first of all, he echoes the vocal melody, and then he picks the guitar melody as well, and it just flows through beautifully. We get a few more sort of oohs, and then again the refrain, from Cave, and some gentle, lovely cymbal splashes that kind of lead us to a soft landing of a finish. Yeah, this song's really full of character and has a very viewed from a different prism as to the inside of this song. I feel like it's quite old school as well. It feels like it could be a song that's been done for the soundtrack of a 1960s film. I'm thinking of something like the Thomas Crown Affair or something like that. It would just fit in really well. That sort of slightly jazzy feel, that sort of late 60s modernist, Yeah, this is absolutely full of character, beautifully judged. All the moving parts are fantastic. It's really simple, but the way it's done, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. I thought you would like it. I mean, a lot of people know this song, and if you know the song, I feel like you need this is required listening, just to almost like track the history of this song and how many times and in different ways it's been covered. Um, so yeah, you're spot on. I think you talked about Cave as well, and there's something about like usually with Cave when he sings he sounds like one kind of broken man. And it's usually the broken man who's broken psychologically, like something's gone off and now he's become a monster or this dark version of whoever it was before this breaking moment. In here, he sounds like a man broken with resignation, just like, I'm done. I'm hanging my boots up. I'm hanging up my jacket and coat on the wall, and it's a fucking day. I'm calling it. And I love the wariness of that. Just the to me it screamed like you can make it a metaphor all you want. But I've literally felt like this is a guy who's been working extra hours on power lines his whole goddamn life, and now he just wants to be able to rest for what will be probably a very short duration because of all the hell he's put his body through in his working life. Give me give me this golden hour before I literally, set off into the sunset in this life. And I don't know. As an older guy, I'm not that old, but as an older guy who knows that that's the next major thing in life, probably is that there's a bittersweet resonance with that approach vocally with where I am and where I can see where I'm looking at where my dad is, where, you know what I mean? Like it's easy to connect with if you're of a certain age or in a certain mindset, I think. But I'm sorry, you clearly had something to say. I don't want to hold you off any longer.
Yeah, so we've just done a Nick Cave episode. The next one we do will explain all, but there is the big elephant in the room which I haven't addressed with Nick Cave, which also explains some of the resonance you hear in this
Yeah.
performance.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, all of that baggage, um, musically and personally, comes through with him, and he's been through the ringer in so many different ways,
Mhm.
that we haven't addressed yet. But I mean, even just the birthday party and the bad seeds and his heroin use and all that sort of stuff, that wears on you after a while.
Yeah, I would imagine.
you know and so he has that, like I said, that exhaustion almost, like you just said, ready to hang up and
Yeah.
just, he's had enough. And there's a bit of that in his voice which is, again, is a beautifully judged. You know, he could have. I'm sure he could have picked up the phone to many, many people. And I think this is a really good call to get Nick Cave to do this.
Yeah,
Really good
absolutely.
call.
And the more I go on, maybe you already know some of this stuff, but the more I go on about the interesting dynamics between, or the connective tissue between Flea, of all people, and Nick Cave is interesting. Some of I knew about, but I didn't know the details behind a lot of it. So this was all this was a lot of fun researching, as well as just listening to the first time. And then one of my first thoughts after thinking of my dad, John, was I need to get this in the hands of John. Not to presume that you wouldn't have naturally come across this. I'm sure it was on your fucking radar. But it's just the where we are and how much we exchange music with one another. That's going to be one of the first things I think when I hear what I feel is a good song. Um, so, not that he likely requires any introduction, but Michael Peter Balzeri, born October 16th, 1962, known professionally as Flea, is an Australian and American musician and actor. He is a founding member and bassist of the funk rock band Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is an incredibly polarizing band. I understand that, probably even more so from the British lens. Flea has also been a member of supergroups Atoms for Peace, Antamask, Pigface, and Rocket Juice and the Moon, and he has played with acts including Circle Jerks, the Mars Volta, Johnny Cash, Tom Waits, Alanis Morissette, Young MC, Nirvana, What Is This, Fear, and Jane's Addiction. He's got quite a resume, this very small, irritating bug. Flea's playing incorporates elements of funk, including prominent slap bass, psychedelia, punk, and hard rock. In 2009, Rolling Stone readers ranked Flea the second best bassist of all time, behind John Entwistle. In 2012, he and the other members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Flea has acted in films and television series such as Suburbia, Back to the Future Part 2 and 3, My Own Private Idaho, The Chase, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Dude, Son-in-Law, The Big Lebowski, Lowdown, Baby Driver, Boy Erased, The Wild Thornberrys, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Babylon. He is the co-founder of Silver Lake Conservatory of Music, a nonprofit organization founded in 2001 for underprivileged children. In 2019, he published a memoir of his life, Acid for the Children. His debut solo album, Honora, on which this track features, was released about a week ago on March 27, 2026. He was born in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. He is of partial Hungarian and Irish descent. His father, Mick Balzeri, an avid fisherman, often took him fishing in his youth. When Flea was 4, his family moved to Rye, New York, in the United States for his father's work at the Australian consulate in New York. In 1971, his parents divorced and his father returned to Australia. Flea and his sister Karen stayed with their mother Patricia, who subsequently married jazz musician Walter Urban. Flea's stepfather frequently invited musicians to the house for jam sessions. The family moved to Los Angeles, California, where Flea became fascinated by the trumpet. He attended private lessons taught by Jane Sager. He had no interest in rock music at the time, instead idolizing jazz musicians like Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, and Dizzy Gillespie. Flea described his childhood home as violent. His stepfather was an aggressive alcoholic who eventually became involved in shootouts with police. Flea said, "I grew up being terrified of my parents, particularly my father figures. It caused a lot of trouble later in life. To cope, Flea began smoking cannabis at 13 and became a daily user. He was first called Flea as a teenager for his seeming inability to sit still, and the nickname stuck. Nicknamed Mike B. the Flea, he attended Fairfax High School and was something of an outcast due to his taste in music. However, he soon met Anthony Kiedis, and after a brief confrontation, the two became best friends. Kiedis recalled, "We were drawn to each other by the forces of mischief and love, and we became virtually inseparable. We were both social outcasts. We found each other and turned out to be the longest lasting friendship of my life. Flea was introduced to rock music by Hillel Slovak, and particularly punk rock by Kiedis. Flea learned to play bass from Slovak, who shortly thereafter asked him to be a bassist in his band Anthem. Flea soon developed his own style and joined the group, but quit several months later to play for the punk outfit Fear. He then rejoined Slovak to form an intended one-off band, Tony Flo and the miraculously majestic Masters of Mayhem, along with Kiedis and Jack Irons, all of them at the time inspired by free funk band Defunct and the hip-hop act Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And thus, this was essentially the genesis point for what would become the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You familiar with Slovak, with Hillel Slovak, the name I mentioned earlier? He was the original guitarist of Red Hot Chili Peppers before Frusciante, and I think he died of a heroin overdose pretty early on in their existence. But he was a widely talented guy. You may have even heard some of his stuff on their earlier stuff. But yeah. So this episode is going to be dedicated to a solo work. So we're going to put the brakes on the history of Red Hots, but just show you the, sort of where Flea came from a musical standpoint. So fast forward some 40 years into the future, after several albums, Grammys, tours, collaborations, plenty of loss, plenty of triumphs, we finally reached the point where Flea has now written and released his own solo album. Something that seems so far overdue when you reflect back on all the years and accomplishments and projects that he had been part of. Anora serves as a kind of love letter to jazz music, the first genre of music Flea truly fell in love with, and the one that inspired him to become a musician in the first place. The album features 6 original songs along with covers of songs originally written by Eddie Hazel and George Clinton, Jimmy Webb, Frank Ocean, and Shay Taylor and Ann Rennell. Flea provided lead vocals, bass, and trumpet, while Tom York and Nick Cave provided guest vocals. Josh Johnson produced the album and performed saxophone and keyboards, and the backing band features the guitarist Jeff Parker, bassist Anna Butters, and drummer D'Antoni Parks, with additional contributions from Mauro Rafosco and Nathaniel Walcott, as well as 2 other members of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Frusciante and Chad Smith. The first single, A Plea, was released on December 2nd of 2005. The release included a music video directed by Flea's daughter, Clara. It was also followed by Traffic Lights featuring Tom York. The third single, an instrumental cover of Frank Ocean's Thinking About You, was released on February 11th, 2026, and the album was promoted by a short tour it will be followed by a short tour in May of 2026, so next month that kicks off. The album was named after his great-great-grandmother and inspired by the difficulties with her difficulties with poverty in Ireland and her immigration to Australia. The cover art features a 1960s-era photo of Flea's mother-in-law, Shaheen Bedian, in Iran. Over at Metacritic, Anora received generally favorable reviews based on a weighted average score of 75 out of 100 from 13 critics thus far. The review aggregator Any Decent Music gave the album a weighted average of 7.4 out of 10 from 12 critic scores. This track, Wichita Lineman, is one of the covers from the album and was originally written in 1968 by Jimmy Webb for the American country music artist Glenn Campbell, who recorded it backed by members of the Wrecking Crew. Widely covered by other artists, as we noted, it has been called the first existential country song. In 2021, Rolling Stone magazine list of the 500 greatest songs of all time ranked the song at number 206. Singer-songwriter Bob Dylan considered it the greatest song ever written. And British music journalist Stuart McConey, is that correct? Are you familiar with it? Okay, McConey, called it the greatest pop song ever composed. Over at channel favorite Pitchfork, hit it, John. That's it. Writer Sadie Sartini Garner reviewed the album and offered up, a couple years ago, Flea had an idea. The Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist was turning 60 and taking stock of what he had wanted to do with the rest of his life. He made a deal with himself. During Red Hot Chili Peppers' 2-year-long stadium tour, he'd practice playing the trumpet, an instrument he learned as a kid, every single day. Then he'd make a record. By the time the tour ended, he'd undergone hundreds of practice sessions, spent innumerable hours working with LA jazz legend Ricky Washington, and racked up untold numbers of noise complaints in hotels around the world. He hooked up with some of the most interesting, idiosyncratic players in the Los Angeles jazz scene, and true to his word, is now releasing. Go ahead, John.
I just found that really funny. That you imagine over the years, the Red Hot Chili Peppers touring the world, they got complaints of noise and behavior, and it's like this time they come around and goes, "Oh, Chili Peppers are in town. Oh, not that fucking trumpet again."
Yeah,
You know?
not the four guys out of their mind on heroin wearing socks on their dicks,
Yeah.
jumping around all over.
Yeah. No. Just some.
Yeah, some of that. Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So yes, he hooked up with some of the most interesting and idiosyncratic players in the Los Angeles jazz scene, and true to his word, is now releasing the first bona fide solo album of his career, an album that sounds nothing like the music that made him so famous. It's a mature and compositionally sophisticated collection of songs whose only real unifying thread is that Flea is very excited to be playing all of them. Fans expecting the screwball energy he brings to Around the World or his One Hot Minute vocal cut P may be disappointed. Anyone who has ever shouted in your ear at the party that actually the Chili Peppers would be so good if it was just Flea and John Frusciante may feel vindicated. Should Honora need to be classified, jazz is an apt descriptor as any. But more than anything, it's the record Flea was always meant to make, and a record Flea could make. For much of its runtime, you can practically hear him floating. And at Jazz Times, contributor Jordana Elizabeth Graham Mayer reviewed the album and wrote, "What makes Honora so compelling is that it resists the typical language of crossover or side project. Flea is not dabbling in jazz. He is submitting to it. Returning to the trumpet, his first instrument, he approaches the form not as a virtuoso, but as a student of its emotional grammar. There is an audible humility in that choice, one that shapes the album's entire architecture. This is his first solo album, but it doesn't behave like a debut. It behaves like a return to the trumpet and to pre-fame musical self that predates the Californian mythos that made him iconic. The result is a record that feels less like a reinvention and more like an excavation." Adding, "Honora doesn't demand your attention, it asks for your ear, your steadfast proximity, and your sincerest regard. And in that space, somewhere between breath and sound, between past and possibility, Flea finds something quietly transcendent. Not thoughtless proficiency, but meaning." So, let's jump into these lyrics, John. "I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main roads, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wires. I can hear you through the wine, and the Wichita Lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it doesn't look like rain. If it snows that stretch down south, we'll never stand the strain. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita Lineman is still on the line. And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time. And the Wichita Lineman is still on the line." So, I will note that it is especially interesting that Flea enlisted Nick Cave to contribute to this record. Not because Cave isn't immensely talented, of course he is, or even that the pairing would be odd. After all, Flea is a native Australian and has always adored Cave's works, but rather because at one point, Cave had offered up some unsolicited and hurtful comments about Flea's band, Red Hot Chili Peppers. The Australian musician's comments about the LA funk rock band have haunted him for approximately 25 years. While the exact details of when and where the remark was made are uncertain, the Bad Seeds frontman is believed to have said, "I am forever near a stereo saying, 'What the fuck is this garbage?' And the answer is always Red Hot Chili Peppers." Flea, who also hails from Australia, the Australian state of Victoria, responded to the remark in 2006, acknowledging that it hurt his feelings at first because he is a huge fan of Cave. "I don't care if Nick Cave hates my band because his music means everything to me," Flea said. "He is one of my favorite songwriters and singers and musicians of all time. I love all the incarnations of the Bad Seeds, but it only hurt my feelings for a second because my love for his music is bigger than all of that shit. And if he thinks my band is lame, then that's okay." Which is the most like Ted Lasso way of responding to like pointed anger. You know what I mean? At the end, you're going, "Fuck, what a sweet motherfucker." You know what I mean? He's just so nice. You can't even be mad at him. And then you feel like a shithead for being overtly and unwarrantedly mean toward him, which Cave has since offered up. "I was a troublemaker, a shit stirrer, feeling most at ease in the role of a societal irritant. And I have a feeling maybe this is some of the light that came at the end of the tunnel. And I know you're going to fill in the part between the darkness and this light at some point in the near future, as you alluded to. But I think this is indicative of him turning a new leaf or whatever. Perhaps it's an Australian trait among people of my generation. I don't know. But that comment has followed me around for the last quarter century." Cave also said the most interesting thing about the situation was not his comment, but rather the response from Flea. On Facebook, Flea expressed how much or how hurt he felt by my remark, but went on to say in great detail that he loved my music regardless. The musician said he recalled being genuinely moved by Flea's words and thinking what a classy guy Flea was. Over the years, he said they ran into one another at festivals where their bands were performing and saw each other backstage at shows in LA, adding, "Although we didn't become close friends, my encounters with him were always pleasant. There was a presence to Flea that felt genuine and oddly affecting," he wrote, recalling how they once worked together to assemble a children's choir to accompany the Bad Seeds at Coachella Festival. He and his bandmate Warren Ellis also invited Flea to join them during their Carnage tour for a performance of "We Know Who You Are," remarking, "Watching Warren and Flea perform together with such heart and mutual regard was a glorious sight." And just as a little cherry on top, I should note that Warren Ellis also appeared on Anora. So there you go. But yeah, it's whatever. These guys are all fucking divas honestly, with the exception of Flea. Now, but believe me, I'm not just buttering his bread because I've adored him since the first time I heard him play bass, and he inspired me to play bass. But he really is a super sweet, thoughtful, and caring guy, which is probably caught Cave off guard because Cave was thinking these assholes have to be jerk offs in California who think they're the greatest thing ever, and that might be true of one of them. But but there are three genuinely wildly talented musicians in that band that do some
the singer
stuff. So.
Yeah, I would say for a number of years, Flea has been the human embodiment of the character Tigger, really. Bounce around on his tail and exuberance and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. I always remember one of the reissues of Entertainment by Gang of Four had blurb from him on the back. He wrote a whole thing about how wonderful Gang of Four were. And I can't remember all of it, but I can remember the closing line was, "These limeys rocked my world." That was the he ended it, which is really cool.
It was great.
And as you say, Nick Cave was a shit stirrer and this sort of, almost Mean Girls kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, too cool for school and all that sort of shit. He has obviously developed into a much more different person. Nowadays, Gabe is seen as this sort of elder statesman of the alternative, rock scene, as it were.
Yeah.
And his word carries a lot of weight and people pay attention to it. But I think it's very unfair to retrospectively add that same weight that he carries now to comments that he made 25, 30 years ago when he was a cock. Um, and you're right in terms of and it's really interesting in this country. I'm not sure. I think Chili Peppers are quite popular. They're not as popular as the States, obviously, and they do have a very American sound.
Yeah.
Not like a polarizing American sound. It's just as distinctively American and probably that sort of Californian
Yeah.
sound to it as well. But they are pretty popular, and I don't think their appeal has soured in the way that it has done a little bit in America. I don't think that's reached over here in terms of any pushback.
Yeah.
They're not quite. They're just seen as a very decent band, but yeah. So I don't think there's that baggage that there might be. In terms of you saying they're being a polarizing band. Don't think they're necessarily the case in this case. It may be, but I don't think so.
It's just now gotten to the point, and this happens with a lot of bands, where if they come out with a new album, am I going to listen to it to give it a shot? Yes. Am I going to rush to buy it? No. I want to hear it before I commit to it, because there have been too many times there have been very few, ripe fruits to pick from on their later
Sure.
basically Californication on has been like a little hit or miss. Some of their stuff's great, and there are myriad shining examples of how good John Frusciante and Flea are at their instruments, and even Chad Smith. I don't want to shit on Chad Smith but I think everybody kind of props Frusciante up as one of the great guitarists of like the last 30 years or 40 years or whatever. And I think Flea even more so. I mean, the rankings and so forth about his bass work. I mean, to be sandwiched between Entwistle and Paul McCartney is pretty fucking incredible. Whether you agree with it or not, you're being spoken of in the same breath as two of the great bass players, and maybe one of, if not the greatest songwriter of all time. He and John Lennon and McCartney. But it's just, that's lofty stuff. But the Kiedis is just a hard pill to swallow from who he is as a person and some questionable decisions that he's made in his life, to his vocal approach, which is sometimes tolerable if he stays within a pocket this big, but when he goes beyond it, it's awful, and then the rapping thing can come off as so I can understand why they would be polarizing here, there, or anywhere. But you can't deny that Flea's bass work.
Well, it's a McCartney.
That's fair too. That's fair too.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, Flea comes across great, always
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch him, man. Dude, like to watch him play the national anthem on bass before like Lakers games occasionally and shit like that is always a treat. He is he gives back to the community so much, as I underscored with the Silver Lake Music Conservatory and all that stuff. He just is a really, really solid dude. And I think I wish more rock stars were like that. So yeah, we've checked Flea off the guys who were huge inspirations to Andy List, and in the coming weeks, I think we're going to revisit somebody else who was a huge influence on me becoming a musician, and that's Les Claypool. So we'll check him out as well. I think he was also in like the top 8 bassists of all time. So look forward to hearing your thoughts on that, and I really do appreciate your thoughts on this, and I hope you enjoy all the rest of the songs on the album that you have waiting for you. You can now run off and check out. So appreciate your patience with this one, John. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this collaboration by Mr. Cave and Flea, and their rendition of this classic tune, Wichita Lineman. I really look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. I know, obviously, at least one of y'all have, as you were quick to mention it in the comments on our last Nick Cave video. For everybody else who's since given a listen or has known about it, or this is their first, I just love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. This is a really interesting song and a really interesting take on it, as John was quick to point out. So look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Please like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. Goes a long way to help the channel, and we really do appreciate it. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.